Now, on our next story, we're going to talk about a movie that is highly beloved. One that, for those of you watching or listening, you have most likely have seen and most likely have enjoyed. And I know I enjoy it. I know it's one of my favorite movies. I'm, of course, talking about Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And ever since that movie first came out back in 1988, there's been a lot of speculations in regards to a possible sequel to Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Now, of course, we have known that there have been several attempts in the past in order to have Roger Rabbit's big comeback. But in order to have that, it's a little bit more complicated. But why is it that nowadays, even though Roger Rabbit is a very popular movie and very beloved, why is it that now, especially in this age of cinema, in which we have seen many nostalgic properties making a big comeback, especially recently, like with Beetlejuice, for example, how come we haven't seen one from Roger Rabbit as of yet? Well, according to the film's director, Robert Zemeckis, it turns out to possibly be Jessica Rabbit. Yes, allegedly, or well, apparently, Robert Zemeckis says that right now, the reason why we don't really have a Roger Rabbit sequel is mainly because Disney would not want to do anything with Roger's femme fatale girlfriend, Jessica Rabbit. Now, I could go and read you what Robert Zemeckis actually said in this article here on Variety, but you know what? I'm actually going to let Robert Zemeckis say it himself, because the source of it all is actually on the podcast Happy, Sad, Confused with Josh Horowitz. And from there, in the podcast, they were mostly talking about a lot of Robert Zemeckis' career, and especially his latest movie that just released here. But there was a little segment in which they talked about Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and even a little bit on why is it we don't have a sequel as of yet. And this is what Robert Zemeckis has to say.
Here's what you have to know, and you know this. The current Disney would never make Roger Rabbit today.
Yeah.
So they can't make a movie with Jessica in it.
Right.
So there's very little. So the Seaman and Price sequel script isn't ever going to see the light of day, as good as it is.
Really?
Because I mean, look what they did to Jessica at the theme park. They trussed her up in a trench coat, you know.
Can't show it.
Right, exactly.
Was Eddie Valiant in there? Obviously, we lost the great Bob Hoskins. Was there a way?
So then he would go on to go and discuss about a little bit of the original idea of what they wanted to do in the sequel, specifically mentioning how originally they were thinking about having Eddie Valiant come back, but only as a ghost, where he would just pop in from time to time to go and help out Roger in whatever would be happening in the sequel. But unfortunately, since Bob Hoskins passed away several years ago, that idea could never really happen, or they could try to do that, but it would honestly be a bit distasteful. So the big thing to go and highlight is the fact that apparently Robert Zemeckis believes that it's because of Jessica Rabbit why we do not have a sequel to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, or at least Disney wants to keep their distance away from Jessica Rabbit, mainly because of the image that, she's a little too sexy for Disney, and Disney wants to maintain their family-friendly image and stuff like that. And honestly, I'm just going to go and say this right now. When you take a step back from what Robert Zemeckis is trying to say, and you look at the big picture of what his argument is, it's really not that different from what many other people have been complaining about Disney, and it has become so tiring, and honestly, it's an argument that is becoming less and less true, where nowadays, it's not even like a relevant statement anymore. It's like, I would even say it's like, you can't even say that it's true anymore. And that is the fact that Oh, Disney has become way too politically correct. Yes, it's another one of those comments. It's another one of those boomer style complaints where they say that, oh, Disney nowadays is just so politically correct. They're not like how they used to be when they're so grand and they can do whatever they want. And now Disney is just being so restrictive and politically correct for the sake of being family friendly and to be, to be all PC and liberal and just trying to make money and whatever, it's really at the end of the day, just that same old song and dance number, that same repetitive argument, which I'm just going to go and say that I don't think you could really say that anymore, especially when nowadays Disney is becoming more open to make mature content, to make things that are not only geared a little bit more towards adults, but to even make flat out R-rated movies out there. And the best example to go and prove this is what we have seen this summer with Deadpool and Wolverine. And that feature went all out in terms of its R rating. Like, it really did its best to ensure that it is made for adults, with cursing galore, especially both from Deadpool and Wolverine, and not to mention being highly violent with all the slicing and dicing and the gore and the explosions and all that kind of stuff, like all the kind of human mutilation that you would see. Like especially all the different creative ways you would see so many different characters just bleed out and just perish on screen and stuff like that, especially with that opening bit where Deadpool would be dancing to Bye 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 by NSYNC and just slicing and dicing all those people. Like, at that point, like, it is unapologetically R-rated. And not only that, but they also acknowledge that it is from Disney. Like, yeah, sure, they didn't flat out put up the Disney logo in front of the film, but at the same time, they're not hiding that the movie is from Disney either. Like, they're starting to really open up. And not to mention, like, even in terms of trying to go and promote it, like, Disney decided to go all out and say that, yeah, this is our movie, actually. And even like when you went to Disneyland during the summer, like, you would see like those little shows that they did with Deadpool and Wolverine, with those like the story time with Deadpool stuff. So from there, like, the big point that I am trying to say, especially with the fact that Deadpool and Wolverine has now become one of the most successful films of the year, one of the two next to Inside Out to make over $1 billion at the box office, it's at the point that now Disney is starting to become a lot more open in terms of making adult content or making things that are not exclusively family friendly. Like, they don't have to attach the Disney brand to just be for families and kids. Now they can go and have a little bit more freedom or be a little bit more experimental with trying out more mature content. And with the success of Deadpool and Wolverine, both critically and financially, now they can go and try to be a bit more adult and be not as worried about doing things that wouldn't be perceived as family friendly. Now, I'm not saying this to say that, oh, they can make the Roger Rabbit sequel be R-rated as much as they want. I'm not saying that, oh, we can make that Roger Rabbit sequel be extremely violent, or have Jessica Rabbit just go all out and like just get naked and be in like full frontal nudity right in front of the camera. I'm not saying that at all. Even though there is that dumb male side of me that would love to see that, like, that's not my point that I am trying to make. What I am trying to say is that the image of Jessica Rabbit being too mature or being a little bit too scandalous for Disney, that is not something that they should really be worried about. If anything, if it seems a little too mature for the Disney brand, then they could just go and label it as a 20th century movie. Because nowadays the 20th century logo is pretty much used the same way like how Touchstone was back in the 80s and 90s. And especially with the fact that technically Who Framed Roger Rabbit is a Touchstone movie. So if you would make a sequel to Roger Rabbit and stay true to that more mature tone, then you could just go and give it the 20th Century logo. So it wouldn't be that big of a problem. And speaking of Jessica Rabbit specifically, I just want to go and point out that even though the way that Disney would use Jessica Rabbit, it's not as prominent as it was back in the 1990s. Disney is not hiding Jessica Rabbit either. Because Robert Zemeckis' comment, he makes it sound like Disney wants nothing to do with Jessica Rabbit. They don't want anything to do with Jessica and try to bury her. Kind of frame Jessica Rabbit no differently than how Disney is treating Song of the South nowadays, but I know that is absolutely not true. First of all, you got the comment in regards to Disneyland, where they updated her and gave her a trench coat. But there is a lot of context that he is missing, because he forgot to go and mention the fact that not only did they update Jessica Rabbit, and yes, they did give her a trench coat where she's not as, risque or as much of a femme fatale like we see her in the movies, but also they gave her a bigger role. They gave her more of a purpose. In the original Roger Rabbit cartoon spin, she was mostly presented as a bit of a damsel in distress, no differently than how Princess Peach was in the Mario games. But this time around, they decided to give her a bit more of a bigger role. When they added that cue to cartoon spin, they did explain that now Jessica has become a private detective, that she has a bit more of a bigger role, that she would go and fight off the weasels alongside Roger Rabbit to make her a more of a stronger character than she was in the original cartoon spin. So that's just a big clarification that I want to go and do. And not to mention, if Robert Zemeckis really does believe that Jessica Rabbit is a problem for Disney and that they don't want to display her whatsoever, then why is it that Disney is still selling merchandise with Jessica Rabbit's image in there? If you go to the Disney parks, you'll still see plenty of stuff that Disney is selling that does feature Jessica Rabbit, and not in the same way like in cartoon spin where she has a trench coat and stuff like that, but the same femme fatale sex bombshell that we all know and love for Jessica. In fact, I actually have a proof of this. When I was at Disney last year, when I went to Disney World, I actually did go and buy a bunch of pins. And one of them that I purchased, I actually have it right over here. If you could probably see it, this is a pin of Jessica Rabbit. And, she's presented in a sexy pinup pose, and it says here, and it even has the writing, "I'm not bad, I'm just drawn that way." And keep in mind, this is something that I have purchased last year. And it's something that I know to this day, Disney is still going out and sell. They're still presenting Jessica Rabbit as that sexy bombshell. So in that regards, I don't know what the fridge he's really talking. I don't know what Robert Zemeckis is talking about. Disney is still highlighting and presenting Jessica Rabbit. Maybe not as prominently as they used to. It ain't like in the early 90s when Roger Rabbit's popularity is on par to Mickey Mouse or how Stitch is nowadays. But they're still acknowledging Jessica Rabbit and still presenting her as the sexy bombshell. So they're not hiding it whatsoever. So it really shows that when it comes to Disney, if they would go and make that Roger Rabbit sequel, maybe they would update her character a little bit to be more than just a femme fatale and stuff like that, but they won't take out the sexy aspect from Jessica Rabbit. So I have to heavily disagree with him that Jessica Rabbit seems to be a problem. In fact, I'm honestly going to go and turn things around on this. If I would blame one problem, if I would have to point out an issue of what's really holding us back from actually having a Roger Rabbit sequel, I don't think it's actually because of Jessica. I think it's more because of Robert Zemeckis. I think it's really because of him why I think we don't have one yet. And that's mainly because, well, I'm just going to be brutally honest, but when was the last time that we've had a good Robert Zemeckis movie? And I don't mean like a masterpiece in the levels of like some of his earlier works like Back to the Future or Roger Rabbit or Castaway or anything like that. Like, when was the last time that we have seen a legitimately good Robert Zemeckis film that that people have actually enjoyed? Like, write down in the chat wall, honestly. Write down what you think. Like, okay, I've seen people comment The Walk back in 2015. There was Flight in 2012. Some are saying Polar Express. But honestly, you kind of you're kind of proving my point. It's been honestly a long time that we have seen Robert Zemeckis make a movie that honestly feels very much worthwhile. Because the quality of the films that he's been putting out now, oh my God, let's be honest, they've been bad. Honestly, the Robert Zemeckis of nowadays is certainly not like the Robert Zemeckis back in the back in the 80s, 90s, and even a bit of the 2000s. Because this Robert Zemeckis we have now, it's honestly awful. And a lot of the movies are just, a lot of his movies are just awkward at best. We got films like Welcome to Marwen, or even that new movie Here. A lot of critics are saying that it's not that worth it. And especially the Pinocchio remake. Oh my goodness, did he make a mess out of that Pinocchio remake. And I'm just going to say, if Disney would announce that they would make a sequel to Roger Rabbit and they would bring back Robert Zemeckis, I'd honestly be pretty hesitant. I don't know if I would be as excited as I'd want to be, considering that the quality of his features are really not what they used to be. And I mean, considering that it is Roger Rabbit, it would make sense if you would get someone like Robert Zemeckis be involved so that in some capacity, he would have a say in terms of making that Roger Rabbit film. But as is now, as he is right now, if it's going to be, if he's going to be bringing out quality entertainment, like what we have seen with stuff like Marwen or Here or the Pinocchio remake, it's not going to be worthwhile. It's just going to be nothing but an absolute wasted potential. It's hard for me to feel like it's hard for me to feel like I'd agree with him, or that that I believe him that the script that they got right now is actually good. Maybe it is, but you need someone to go and execute it. And right now, it should not be Robert Zemeckis. And by the way, I just want to go and pretty much mention, by the way, that I just want to go and quickly mention that some people are even saying there is also the copyright troubles. And that's often an overlooked issue that not many people have discussed in terms of Roger Rabbit. The reason why Roger Rabbit is not as prominent as he used to be is largely due to copyright troubles, where the copyright of Roger Rabbit is as complicated as Spider-Man's film rights. It's kind of like a constant struggle between Amblin and Disney. And they would often have a very hard time trying to agree upon something in order to bring back Roger Rabbit. I mean, Disney got very lucky that they were able to even bring back Roger Rabbit for that 2022 Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers movie. But other than that, though, I feel like the issue is a lot more complicated than the kind of comment that Robert Zemeckis has made. Again, this is nothing more than that petty boomer comment of, Disney is so PC, when it's obviously been proven that it's not really true. Disney has grown to become a lot more mature with the stuff that they are bringing out. And they're not, and even in terms of the sexiness, they're not really afraid to go and display that. Case in point, check out some of the episodes of Agatha All Along. And even with Jessica Rabbit, they're still selling her image. They're still selling merch related to her. So there's nothing that's really holding Disney. I don't think the arguments that Robert Zemeckis is making in terms of why we don't have a Roger Rabbit 2, I don't think it's that. I don't think it has to do with how Disney is right now or how Jessica Rabbit is. I think it is more related to Robert Zemeckis and the copyright troubles with Amblin. So I just want to go and put out my piece. And I know that it is my opinion, and I don't know if everybody is going to agree with me with saying that, but yeah, I know that Robert Zemeckis is the director of Roger Rabbit, but like I said before, he's not how he is right now. He's not like the director that we once knew and loved. All right, so with that said, now I would like to go on to the chat wall, and I'd like to ask you all, what do you think about the comments that Robert Zemeckis made about why we don't have a Roger Rabbit sequel yet? Do you guys agree with him? Do you guys not agree? What do you and also, what do you think about the way that Disney is handling Jessica Rabbit nowadays? Let me know what you think. All right, let's see now. This is honestly a really stupid comment for Robert Zemeckis to make. Disney is more than willing to show Jessica very prominently. How I honestly have to agree with you, though I have to agree with you, and I think it's because Robert Zemeckis and because of how he's not what he used to be, rather it be with the Witches movie. Oh yeah, I forgot about that Witches movie, or especially the Pinocchio remake. Seriously, it kind of says a lot when Pinocchio, A True Story, is better. At least I can laugh at how bad that movie is. Yeah, honestly, I don't know if I would fully agree there. I would say that as a movie, A True Story is worse than the Disney remake. But in terms of the enjoyability, yeah, I honestly would have a lot more fun watching A True Story more so than the Pinocchio remake. All right, what else do we got here? Oh, I highly doubt Jessica Rabbit is the reason why they can't make a sequel. She's a woman who knows she's hot, she's confident, she's loving, and she's an ace icon. It's not like her original outfit was that skimpy. The real reason is every company having a strong hold on IPs and that they won't share unless it's an exorbitant price. I could come up with several Roger Rabbit sequels that are about the animation industry and history. Zemeckis is just a bitter boomer. Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree there. My big question when a Roger Rabbit sequel comes up is just, do we even need one? Roger Rabbit is one of those movies that works best as a standalone. I think it was Brad Bird who says sometimes a story ends at the end. But as for the worry about Jessica Rabbit, no. Besides, with Zemeckis' recent track record with visual effects heavy movies, we may be dodging a bullet. I mean, as long as Roger isn't making a terrible Chris Pine joke. Oh yeah, that is so true. My God, the jokes on Pinocchio, it just reminds me of how cringe that they could be. Especially from that version of Honest John. And I mean, I love Honest John in the original Pinocchio, but that Keegan-Michael Key version was just awful. Especially it's yes, Pinocchio, I shall make you an influencer. Let's call you Chris Pine. Oh, geez. It's just an extra reason why I feel so sorry for Chris Pine nowadays. He's been getting some terrible luck, and he doesn't deserve it. Rather it be with box office failures like with the Dungeons & Dragons movie and Wish, or even his directorial debut that really didn't work out, or even that joke right there. Let's be honest, Chris Pine deserves better, and he deserves more recognition for the works that he has done. I mean, say what you will about Wish or King Magnifico, but at least, Chris Pine did give Magnifico some charm. At least he tried to make King Magnifico charismatic, or even in the Dungeons & Dragons movie. My God. Do I need to explain how fun the dude is in that movie? The only reason why you wouldn't understand is because you may have not seen it. I just want to go and lay that out right there. Anyways, let's see. Honestly, I think it would be awesome to have a Roger Rabbit sequel and maybe take some inspiration from Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin by making a film about her being a detective. But I agree with you that the problem of making a sequel is far more complicated than a stupid argument about Jessica herself. Yeah, if anything, it honestly feels like a distraction from the real problems of why we don't have a Roger Rabbit sequel yet. And also, just to go back from the previous comment, I do agree, honestly, it's cool if we would have one, but then again, we can live without a Roger Rabbit sequel, considering that movie, is just pure genius, and it would be next to impossible to go and, make something that would be as good as that. Anyways, yeah, I'm not surprised that some people would think about that Jessica Rabbit's sexiness is the reason of their problems. I think even beyond that, well, I actually don't think Robert Zemeckis is the issue either. Honestly, if you ask him to come back, I wouldn't hesitate if it would be good. He officially lost his touch. I know they say it's an IP problem, but I mainly think we can't have another sequel because they don't have a clear idea on how to do another film with cartoon characters again. Yeah, and honestly, I feel like with even with that Chip and Dale movie, like that's the closest we've gotten to a Roger Rabbit sequel. And I know there's been some different reactions to it, but for me, it was like, I ended up, I didn't hate it. Like it ended up turning out to be a lot better than I expected, but the movie was kind of forgettable, honestly, especially like when the plot is just so bland, it just sucked. All right, I think I'll read one more comment before we go on to our next break here. Let's see. I'll go with this one. If it's a Jessica Rabbit problem, then make some changes to make the character's appearance. Like look at Ariel from The Little Mermaid. She looks better with great personality. Make Jessica Rabbit more a strong, feminine, not damsel in distress, and less revealing while staying true to the original design. Also, make Roger Rabbit's sequel PG-13. Walt Disney Animation Studios can start their adult animation label like Illumination did with Moonlight. Don't give excuses, Robert. You don't like women. Okay, hold on. I'm not gonna go and accuse Robert Zemeckis of being a misogynist by pinning the blame on Jessica Rabbit. I don't want to go and make that statement whatsoever, and I don't think that is true that Robert Zemeckis is a misogynist. That's not the issue whatsoever. I just think that, honestly, again, it just feels like nothing more but a boomer problem of honestly, that I can pretty much say right now is the big lie that Disney is so PC.